Isigaw ang tinig mo, ihayag sa buong mundo ang karapatan. Kalayaan, buksan ang isip mo, kaalaman ang yaman mo sa karapatan.
What's up, schoolmates? Welcome back sa isa na namang matinding diskusyon ngayong gabi.
Tama ka dyan, Trisha. At syempre, hindi mawawala ang ating healthy bardagulan na puno ng talino at tapang ng mga kabataan. Alam niyo ba, schoolmates, sa kasalukuyan, ang minimum age of criminal liability natin dito sa Pinas ay nasa 15 years old lang. Ngunit, may mga panukala na ibaba ang minimum age of criminal liability sa 10 years old. Pero, para lamang ito sa mga heinous crimes tulad ng murder, rape, at kidnapping.
Mainit ang usapin na ito, pero syempre, matagal na natin pinag-usapan yun.
Yes, mainit na discussion siya.
Kumbaga nagkaroon na ng factor because of recent events.
Right.
Kaya nga sabi nga daw ng ilan, kung marunong gumawa ng mabigat na krimen, ay dapat din daw silang managot. Sabi naman ng iba, bata pa daw sila.
Yes.
So, syempre, hindi dapat ikulong. Kaysa parusahan ay dapat gabayan daw sila sa tama. Pero ano nga ba talaga yung tama? Diba?
Totoo. Sobrang controversial siya ngayon dahil tanong natin sa lahat, dapat bang ibaba sa 10 years old ang minimum age of criminal liability para sa heinous crimes?
Kaya naman kilalanin natin na ang first set ng ating mga debaters, sila ang grupo na pumapabor na dapat ibaba sa 10 years old ang criminal age of liability to heinous crimes sa ating bansa. Representing the National University Debate Society, Team NU.
Hi, my name is Aram Earl M. Guillermo. I am 21 years of age and I'm from National University, Manila. I think the most preparation that we did out of all of them was just, we just did our research and we just based it from the things that we know, that the information that are available within to us, and we just kind of like talked about it because at the end of the day, I think the conclusion of this entire discussion is for us to know more, so that for the public to know more about the current issue itself.
I'm Jarrell James Hantada. I'm currently 20 years old, also studying at National University Manila. As someone that is very close to the public, being able to serve the public, I'm very active in volunteer duties. This is a very close motion or topic in my heart. So I'm definitely going to be debating it with my own personal experiences, with my own perspectives regarding the situation. So expect so many rhetorical things that are very personal to me.
I'm Lyra Sofia A. Magalang, 19 years old, and I am from National University Manila. Frankly speaking, I was a bit nervous when I heard about the topic, especially that it is juvenile justice. But however, given that my teammates have my back and support, the only thing that we did for the preparation is actually talk about what we would do in the discussion proper.
As someone that worked with SOD for like the past 2 years nung pandemic era, I know the older generation of members, sana siguro the expectation and standard is still there.
Yeah, let's just try to have fun.
At makakaharap naman nila ang grupo na hindi pumapabor sa pagpapababa ng criminal liability to 10 years old dito sa Pinas. Sila naman ang pambato ng Polytechnic University of the Philippines School of Debaters, Team PUP!
Hello, my name is Hubert Ivan M. Kumia. I am 19 years old. I am from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. We believe that the debate should, have a good decision out of it. We believe that there should be something worth noting and something worth learning from this discussion. And therefore, the strategy we had was to look up what our government could do instead of having to actually go forward or move forward with this kind of action. Think thoroughly before, anything that happens.
Hi, my name is Dio Esteban. I am 21 years old and I am from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. As an opportunity to actually spark conversation, hindi lang sa loob ng mainstream media as someone na nagtitik ng broadcasting, but also sa labas din po.
Hello, I'm Jean Mahawili. I'm 20 years old and I'm from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. I think it's one of the most interesting topics to be had in the government right now in our political landscape. So I think it's really important for people who are within the sector who are most affected by it to be able to speak on it and to be able to debate on it in a way that would produce the most important results out of this discussion.
I hope we have a healthy discussion. We produce something that is of value. Let's make the world a better place through debate.
Sa ating pagbabalik, sisimulan natin ang mainit na balitaktakan dito lang sa number 1 youth debate ng bayan, Schoolmates!
Get ready dahil dadalhin tayo ng ating mga paa sa shoe capital of the Philippines for another food venture. Eats Fun goes to Marikina. Kasama ang certified foodie na si Leslie Ordinario para mag-chill at chumibog.
Ang sarap ng cheese, ang sarap ng ham, and everything.
Eats Fun ngayong linggo, alas 10 na umaga.
O, alam nyo naman, nagugustuhan ko talaga. Walang eme to, ah.
Dito lang sa PTV.
Nagbabalik ang Schoolmates! Reminder lang mga ka-Schoolmates na ang bawat episode natin ay hindi nagdidikta kung ano ang tama o mali. Rather, it's about sparking conversations and hearing different perspectives. Pero bago tayo magsimula, let's lay down the ground rules. May dalawang teams na maglalaban, ang Team Pro at Team Con, na may tig-tatlong miyembro. Ang team leaders ang unang sasalang sa ating debate. Para sa bawat tanong, may 3 rounds or lives ang bawat isa, na may 30 seconds per speaker per round. Kapag sobrang intense at walang gustong magpatalo, we activate the bonus round. 1 minute and 30 seconds yan na free flow discussion. Meaning, bahala na magsagutan ang magkabilang panig. Pero kung halimbawa, hindi na makarebat ang naunang debater, pwede siyang mag-buzz para palitan ng ibang team member. Ito ang twist. Bilang mga host, may kapangyarihan kaming mag-buzz sa gitna ng laban. Kung medyo off, boring, o hindi kami satisfied sa sagot ng sinumang debater, we can buzz you out at papalitan ng ibang team member. Kaya make sure na hindi lang matalino ang sagot nyo. Dapat klaro, direkta, at convincing. Bring your best arguments. And that's it, Schoolmates! Ready na ba kayo? Because for sure, ang mga debaters natin ay ready na. Ready na?
Ready.
Ready? Love that! Okay! Palakpakan natin mga debaters natin. So I hope that you've all prepared yourselves because mauunang sumalang ang ating mga team leaders na sina RM from NU and Yuan from PUP. So simulan na natin. Ang first question sa ating mga debaters ay, dapat bang ibaba ang criminal liability for heinous crimes sa 10 years old? Mauuna ang team leader na si Yuan.
Dapat hindi ibaba ang age barrier here simply because children are victims. They're not the ones, they might be the ones committing these crimes at the end of the day, but at the end, they are the victims of circumstance. They're forced to steal because they're in poverty. They're forced to do heinous crimes because they're either exploited by syndicates or they're abused by parents. They do these things so they don't deserve to be punished the same way, let's say, for example, a human adult would be. Not to even...
Right, okay. RM?
I totally agree with you, Yuan, that these kids shouldn't be punished. But at the same time, I think the problem that we have here is as to how we look at the prisons. It's to how we look at them, like we see them as if they're some kind of cubes that are meant to punish people. But at the same time, I think if we lower the liability, I think prisons as a whole, they would inevitably change because they wouldn't cater to adults anymore. Rather, they would cater to children. And like what you've said, it's mostly the adults' fault. And if these adults are incompetent to handle these kids, then why don't we put the kids?
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate more about what you said earlier, Yuan? Meron kang point kanina na binabanggit about why okay lang, rather not to lower down criminal liability. What's that about?
Okay, so the main point that I'm trying to bring up here is, deserve ba nilang mapakusahan the same way an adult would be? Because if you look at children, they don't have the same mental capacity to discern what is right from wrong the same way an adult would be. That is a consensus in this debate. It is a scientific fact. If you, coming into that decision, would like to have them, say, for example, in these prisons at the end of the day, they don't deserve it. Because at the end of the day, they deserve justice means that you give the right kind of punishment as opposed to a punishment for all, which is retribution.
Okay, RM, anything to say about that?
Totally agree, but at the same time, I would like to point out the keyword heinous crimes here. And the thing is, we are not punishing them. We're putting them to prisons, which is really different. We're not giving them a burden of, they're going to get punished, they're going to get tortured. It's not like that at all. What we're trying to say is that we have to live in a society in which we see prisons for children to teach them how to be accountable and liable. Not in a very bad way, but in a very reformist way, in a very educated way. Like, how do we help these kids in general? Like what you said, the parents themselves, like some parents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mentioning on your point, I think I would like to refuse the premise that prison is not punishment. The prison system of the Philippines, it is extremely overcrowded. It is extremely underfunded. It is extremely, underdeveloped. If you would like to develop something, you should try looking at, say, policing systems that punish the people who are actually putting these children under the circumstances that they're in. You should instead try to focus on building pag-asa homes, which are actual reforming ways that you should be, quote unquote, punishing these children. What you're saying, prison is not the solution because not only,
Okay. RM?
Sorry, if I'm not mistaken, you said that prison is not a punishment, correct? And you pointed out what is actually happening, which is the current reality that we have today, right? And I think that one of the main things as to how we can change that reality is, yes, by acknowledging it, but I also think is to actually change it as a whole. That's the reason why I'm pointing this out. We shouldn't look at prisons because the more you say in that perspective, the more it gets constrained upon the reality.
Okay. Hold on. I just need to clarify a few things. I don't think any one of you would want to switch at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. I would want to elaborate. Okay. I love how the first discussion went, but then I wanted to deepen the question. Anong grounds are we saying that you are pro to lower it at 10 years old? Because he mentioned earlier that they don't have the capacity to discern what is right from wrong. What is the grounds of that? How do we determine that they know what is right from wrong? And how do we single this out from adults who are also incapable or placed in circumstances that they cannot discern what is right from wrong? Are you saying that the children should also be tried the same as adults who are incapable of discerning right from wrong? What is the basis of why you want to lower it down and why you are not okay in lowering it down? Yeah.
I don't want to lower it down simply because, one, it is a scientific fact that every scholar ever, if you look it up, everyone agrees, the consensus, that they do not discern right from wrong the same way an adult would. Let's say, for example, 1 to 14 years old, they would not discern right from wrong the same way an adult would. Now, the question then becomes, do they deserve the same punishment as adults who do discern right from wrong properly and more developmentally as compared to these children who are, again, only victims of circumstance they were forced to be put in, such as poverty, for example, such as being abused?
The main groundwork that we're set upon is who is accountable. Like where does the accountability go? That is the very reason why we're targeting the stigma itself rather than the system itself. We're targeting the stigma. Is that it will inevitably change, and we have to have a reformist standpoint.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to elaborate and point out on these. Although I get where you're coming from, that yes, a children, doesn't have the logic, but who's accountable?
Okay, so let's start the free flow discussion. Sorry, I just want to elaborate further. You said accountability.
Yeah.
So where does accountability come from? What do we mean by accountability? You mean to say that you are teaching 10 years old accountability as early as their age? Is that what you're trying to say?
I mean, I like to think of it as this way. We all have approaches, correct? Even the children on their own have their own types of approaches. I'm saying that if we lower the age, eventually there will be new mechanisms or there will be new things that will allow these children, because who can be accountable? Their parents? If their parents are, if we frame it as, they're the main factors why they're doing this, or the other external factors that they can control, then we have to put these children into a position in which they can be accountable or taught how to be accountable.
Okay, so you question accountability. We agree with you that these children demand accountability. Whoever in the world does something wrong, they deserve accountability. But the problem here is that you mistake accountability for criminal accountability. What you're doing when you're criminalizing people is you're not just putting them in jails, you're giving them a criminal record. You're not letting them get into jobs as easily as other people would. You're not getting them into schools as any other children who might not be criminalized would, right? What you're doing is you're not just battling the stigma, you're increasing the stigma, because happens at the end of the day, if these people go into jails, what's going to happen? They're going to get discriminated upon. If they ever get these criminal records, if they ever are criminalized, they would just be under the dirt than they already are.
Wow, heinous crimes. It's very difficult. It's not heinous crimes. It's accountability in heinous crimes. Like what they're trying to do is they're trying to frame it as if these children did heinous crimes. And what we're trying to come from is who's accountable. We're trying to teach accountability. And accountability of crime, it's a heinous crime.
Okay, I need a fresh perspective. Can Aram and Yuan give the spot to a next debater?
Definitely.
Right. Okay.
Alright.
I love how the groundwork is initially started because you guys laid it out. Yours is accountability. Yours is the infrastructure, the system that we have right here. I will go back to what Aram said and Yuan said earlier. When we're saying heinous crimes, it's about murder, rape. Yes, trigger warning to mga schoolmates natin there na most of these things are not essentially being put out in social media without a trigger warning essentially because it has a lot of effect. Have you heard the most recent news about the 16-year-old who got killed?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely, right? So the basis, again, I want to reiterate, your parameter was accountability. So again, schoolmates, sinasabi nila, kanino ilalagay ang accountability kung sa kabataan na as young as 10 years old, ilalagay mo na sa prison. That's your basis, right?
Exactly.
Am I getting correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. Yours is about the system. That's why you don't want it to be further lowered down, right?
Not structurally.
So, how do we navigate in a certain specific situation like that wherein ang nag-commit ng isang crime ay bata? And you mentioned earlier that they cannot discern what is right from wrong. What's the basis of that? Anong nagawa na nila? So, how should they be dealt with?
Okay, one thing that we need to understand is scientifically, children are risk takers inherently at that developmental stage. That's why we can excuse, or like the status quo, we excuse 10 to 14 years old committing certain crimes, and 15 and above. The reason why we don't is because they're already in a position in life, usually based on like the environment they're usually in. They already have the experience, or they already have the environment where they can develop stricter moral code as opposed to how they could have been when they were 10 to 14. So that would be the basis when we say na on heinous crimes. That's why 15 and above is the best way to judge that.
Okay.
I mean, heinous crimes are non-negotiables anyway. It's that extent of a very violent crime that we need to be able to fix. Therefore, if there is already that kind of action, we question then, how do we be accountable towards the feelings of these victims, towards the feelings of these people? Because if the only way for you to answer is, they are kids, then that means, how do we going to fix that kind of behavior? How are we going to make them realize that these are right or wrong? Tell them off? Or should be able to have that kind of avenue for them to realize that, all of my actions does have repercussions. At least in our world, we are not forcing.
Okay, I just want to elevate the question further. We are trying to measure it against a global standard, right? Because most of the countries set it at 14 years and older. So dapat bang sumunod yung Pilipinas given na sa parameters that you have set? Dapat ba tayong sumunod sa global standard na yon? Or dapat ba gumawa tayo ng sarili nating path when it comes to someone as young as 10 years old? Okay.
Okay, the reason why this is a global standard is because the entire world is on the consensus that children should not be held accountable the same way as adults because of the facts that the first speaker was already posited. Now, when we're talking about on an international scale, the reason why some countries are able to lower that on a certain age, like the UK, Australia, New Zealand, that's why they lowered it to 10 years old, is because they have systems that are functional to handle children who have to be put into juvie, as opposed to the Philippines, where structurally we don't have those kinds of systems. That's why right now in the present, we can't do that right now unless we change the system surrounding that kind of.
Okay.
That's where Aram's standpoints come from. There's no reason for the government to fix the system. That's why this bill is the inherent incentive for this government to be able to act upon this motion. But more than that, the reason that we're able to follow it on a global standpoint is because most of the information we have online are intertwined with one another. Therefore, people are able to understand all of these crimes inherently. There is an overgrowing standard and a trend. Therefore, at least on our part, we're already fixing the system, even though that is not a problem as of the moment. We're trying to be more retrospective. We're trying to look into the future, that at least we're trying to prevent those things from
So
happening.
you'd rather be proactive in a sense.
Yes,
That's why
exactly.
you want to do that
Yes,
as
exactly.
early as now. Okay.
Yes.
So last one round for both of you.
Okay.
I love how you guys were able to answer like 2 questions at the same time. And also, paano naman yung hustisya para sa biktima ng mga or pamilya ng biktima, lalo na kung sila yung apektado dun sa ginawa ng isang bata. So, pag kunwari hindi nahatulan or kumbaga hindi man lang na-put into due process yung isang bata simply because bata nga siya. As you said, cannot discern right from wrong. Yun naman, you want to be proactive. Anong gagawin natin doon? How do we deal with the aftermath when something like that happens and it's committed by someone younger?
For me, there are formative educational systems that are there, like for example, DSWD, orphanages, seminars that are able to give them a chance alternatively. But I think those are under functions just the same as jail systems. So with that said, if we anchor those kinds of systems and intertwine them with one another, being able to have judges that are reliable, we're able to at least give children, number one, chances to change them, not because of change like other than heinous crimes, so that therefore we're able to like fix all of those systems altogether. But as also we're trying to improve the systems inherently, or like improve them.
Okay, improving systems is what I got from you. Okay, Jean.
Okay, that is an idealistic standpoint to like base your entire
Okay.
side on. I'm not provoking you, but the thing is, when we're talking about urgency, kasi this is already happening now. So when you're saying that if we lower the crime liability age to 10, then consequentially the government will be compelled to fix those systems that we are attacking. But the thing is, that's a long way coming. The Philippines is particularly poor. We don't have the best governance at hand right now. So the thing is, right now, we cannot do this. Maybe not ever, so long as the societal structures, the legal systems that despair kids, and the prison systems that aren't functional to protect these vulnerable actors are not fixed.
Okay. I have a follow-up question just for this free flow discussion. You're talking about systems. Can you propose a specific system that you have in mind to deal both with the aftermath and the reformation, if that's what you speak of? And on your case, what kind of system change should actually be there para mangyari yung sinasabi natin? Start mo na tayo, Jean. Jean, I want to hear from you.
Okay, to change society overall, we can't do that overnight. Maybe that takes about a decade or so, generations or so. But the thing is, that's much better, or something that's more coherent for us to do as a people than just like put 15 years old and below to jail. So I think the best way forward to fix the problem of like heinous crimes for people below 15 is to change the way that we function as society. These societal structures pertaining to the way that societal norms that surround these circumstances that lead children to commit these crimes, maybe the systems that lead them onto that path of crime, like poverty or lack of education, those things we can fix. We are currently fixing. Okay, so I think that's a better way to invest our time and resources as a people, as opposed to just saying that these children are a lost cause. Let's just send them to prison systems that can account for the fact that they are inherently.
I'm sorry, but I think that standpoint is more idealistic in my opinion. Social reforms takes a longer time, and if we're going to talk about urgency, we're much better off on political and systematical reforms that are more urgent. So I propose that the system that adults are functioning as of the moment with jails are more to be transitioned afterwards with children as well. At least lawmakers or like people, judges are able to discern what kind of punishment are able to be more appropriate on towards these crimes. Because let's face it, judges are more knowledgeable with this stuff. They're able to understand what kind of punishment is appropriate to these crimes. Therefore, at least we extend the system from adults towards children. So that's a more direct approach rather than waiting for social reforms to happen.
Okay.
I think the free flow discussion just ended there. I just wanted to say something about this debate now while the debaters are thinking of what they want to say. We're focusing on reforms or like changes in system that take years before it takes effect. What can we do now? I want to hear a new perspective.
sa mga pampaganda. Dahil sa ASEAN, mabilis ako nakakabili ng mga Thai beauty products. I can buy them online. Pwede rin sa mga Thai fair na ginaganap sa bansa. At syempre, dahil mabilis lang makabiyahe sa Thailand, I can also buy directly to the store.
Visa-free travel to Thailand, where Filipinos can stay up to 30 days.
Natural and organic beauty products, just so perfect for the tropical weather.
ASEAN member states developed the ASEAN Cosmetic Directive to enhance cooperation amongst the ASEAN member states in ensuring the safety and quality of cosmetic products marketed in ASEAN. Dahil sa ASEAN, affordable and accessible ang mga beauty products.
What can we do now? Because we're saying this as if nobody is getting killed, nobody is getting robbed, and these children are continued to being used in different schemes by adults who may or may not be directly accountable for the circumstances that they are in. Or is that clear? I want to hear what can we do now. So I want to hear from Dio.
First of all, we have to stick to the status quo right now. But we have to always do betterment when it comes to this. Kasi unang-una, it is so hypocritical na gustong-gusto nila na magkaroon ng trickle-down approach when it comes to this, ng pagbabago when it comes to this. They expect us to trust the judges. Pero ngayon pa lamang, ang dami ng mga batas, ang dami ng mga sistema, and even mga panukala na mas maliliit na hindi nga maipatupad as early as now. So I think it's gonna take longer when it comes to then. So when it comes to urgency, we are better off po.
Okay, so status quo in terms of urgency. Lera?
Actually, in our perspective, we have to lay foundations on what are we giving to these children. Like, where we have to give direct guidance or let's say guidance in them in general. So because does it mean that we have to focus on social reforms? It takes a longer process. It takes a lot more process than giving the direct guidance of what these children will need.
Okay. What you want is to enable more of the programs, the rehabilitation programs that the government is doing right now. You want it to be better.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing from you. And you want status quo. Okay. So when it comes to dealing with the aftermath, I don't think kasi it was further elaborated earlier. Paano natin ibabalance when it comes to justice? So serving justice for the victims. Kasi right now, we're very centric to the child who committed the crime. But how do we deal with the effects to those who were affected? I want to hear Lera.
Actually, you have said earlier, judges have their own discernment of what is the appropriate crime that can be put it in these children that are affected in these crimes. So, if we put it on another perspective na kailangan iput natin ang mga children sa jails, it should not be the case. Kasi in the first place, prisons is not for torturement, it's for rehabilitation, it's for the improvement of the youth. Especially in Section 13 of the Article of the 1987 Constitution that the youth is part of the nation building of the country.
Okay, sige. I want to hear what you have to say about what she said because she's leaving, their team is leaving the hands of the future of these children to the judge. Essentially, that's what you mean, right? That you want them to undergo the same due process as what a normal adult would. What would you say to
Actually,
that?
hindi naman exclusive sa kanila yung mga sinasabi nila. When it comes to like judging, having the responsibility para sa mga heinous crimes and sa karapatan ng isang 10-year-old. It also happens on us. It also happens on the status quo. So I don't think any of their co-op would actually stand on this one. Because number one, we give rehabilitation na sinasabi din naman nila. We give seminars na sinasabi din naman nila. And pangatlo, lastly, yung rehabilitation, yung punishment, yung retribution na sinasabi nila is rehabilitation on our side, which is, I think, better compared sa side nila.
Okay. So, when we go back to the parameters of what you mentioned earlier about psychological capability ng isang bata under 10 years old maybe or younger to fully discern what is right or wrong. Sabi ng isang psychologist, kung hindi pa fully develop yung utak at decision making ng isang 10 years old, ano yun yung uunahin? So I think this pretty much tumboks what I wanted to say. Ano unahin natin? Science, which is like theoretically correct, but when we absolutely see the reality, there are children as young as 4 that even like goes inside restaurants and like robs people without fully understanding what that means for them. Ano yung unahin natin? Science or public safety? Lera.
For me, we should be focusing on public safety, but we are focusing more on accountability of these children. Firstly, what we have been talking all about in this debate is that children are victims of the adult's crime, or sila ang nagiging victims of these crimes because of these adults. So if we're putting the accountability on these adults, why not be putting accountability to the children itself?
Okay.
First of all, public safety and science correlates with each other. Nakabase ang public safety sa science. Sa daan, sa loob at labas ng bahay mo, nakabase yan. And at the same time, hindi lang naman arbitrary numbers yung mga sinasabi ng mga psychologists or neuroscientists natin when it comes sa utak or decision making ng isang 10 years old. They base it off on science, kaya dapat science pa rin talaga yung inuuna natin dito. Because yung batas din naman natin, nakabase din naman sa science yan. And our law isn't meant to be symmetric, it's meant to be wise. Kaya dapat science yung inuuna natin.
Okay, so essentially what you guys are both saying is you are willing to let what's happening right now continue because whatever you guys are saying is already being done in the system that they're talking about. That's what we're saying. Just clarifying, that's what we got from here, right? Tama? Okay. So, let's go to, instead of lowering yung criminal age, or rather saan ba dapat mag-invest in terms of prioritization ang government? Child protection, education, or family support programs? I don't want I want or prioritization, because you're talking about children being victims of circumstances. You're talking about like children should be being held accountable the same way adults are. So to avoid all of that from happening, where should we put all our eggs right now? Lera.
For us, or for me in general, I think the government should invest more in education, because education intertwines with all other aspects in general. Because if you were to educate children, it will come naturally that magkakaroon sila ng awareness, magkakaroon sila ng perspective of what is right and what is wrong in these circumstances, especially in heinous crimes.
Okay. Actually, I agree on that. Pero however, all those things actually exist on our sides, di ba? Sinasabi natin na yung social reforms is may ganito sila, may ganyan sila. Pero existing din naman yun sa amin eh. And dapat nag-i-invest tayo when it comes to like, sabi nga niya, education. Kasi mas mahal ang pagpapakulong ng isang bata compared sa pagsusuporta sa education system natin dito. When it comes sa pagpapakulong ng bata, we deny them of opportunities, we deny them of things. And when we do like rehabilitation, we build and protect them, and it's better on the longer run po.
So pareho kayo, ang sagot niyo is education. Neither child protection, neither like family support programs. Okay, I wanna like let this free flow be. Do you all agree? Pareho kayo na education ang dapat unahin sa tatlong priorities na yon? Child protection, education, family support programs? Education ang una? Education ang dapat una. Last one. How can we support education if ang iniintindi ng isang bata in this what-if scenario, they wanted to rob because kailangan nila ng pangkain para sa pamilya nila? Alin ang uunahin dapat? How do we say that education, just a what-if question, just challenging what you guys stand for, bakit edukasyon ang dapat unahin?
Kaya nga po kailangan natin ng education right at this moment, kasi dapat yung mga bata naman po, hindi naman po supposedly iniisip nila kung anong kakainin nila ngayon, kung anong kakainin nila bukas, o kung ano yung ihahain sa kanila ng mga magulang nila. Ang iniisip dapat nila ngayon is paano sila makakapasok or paano sila makapasok sa eskwela nila. Kasi yung responsibility ngayon, katulad ng frame up nga ng government side, is that yung same responsibility ng adults is nagiging same responsibility ng mga bata, which I think is not better of on their side.
Nera?
Oh, actually, we agree with that na hindi talaga inisip dapat ng bata ang sabihin natin pagkain or pag-grab. Pero it still boils down to the fact who is accountable on these actions. So, if we're to pinpoint what is the main accountability na dapat meron, dapat ang magkakaroon ng accountability is both the children and both the adults. But in the circumstance na kapag heinous crimes, it should be the children itself.
Actually, saying na dapat sila pareho na merong accountability is really problematic because it's like saying na yung punishment dapat ng bata is the same dapat sa isang neglectful adult. Yung pagiging neglectful adult ng isang tao at yung isang pagiging bata is not the same. Yung bata is forming pa lang. And yung adult is that they already had a life on this. And as I've said a while ago, the law isn't meant to be symmetric when it comes to punishment. It's meant to be wise.
Okay. Anyone else? Nera, would you like to rebut that? You're good? Okay. Last. Okay. Who do you want as your kalaban?
I'll buzz it.
You'll buzz also? Okay, I love that. Thank you so much to Lera and Dio. We're back to who the next speakers would be. Who would want to assume the challenge? Okay, Yuan and Jarrell. Okay, I have one final question for you guys. This is a what if lang ha. Because I wanted to test how versatile your stands are because we're all talking theoretical. Imagine if you yourselves will be the ones na nakapag-commit ng crimes na ito. How would you want to be judged? Yuan?
Nagnakaw ako as a child. I did not know what was right from wrong. And I was forced by my parents to steal food. Ngayon, papakusahan ako by putting myself into jail. Is that fair? No. Who should be jailed? Who should be punished? Of course, it's my parents. Of course, it's the people who put me in these circumstances in the first place. To punish me would be to punish wrongfully. And to punish a child like me and to remove a future from a child such as myself, it's extremely unfair. And it's something that opposition needs to defend.
Okay.
Justice delayed is justice denied. If people are not able to understand which people are held accountable, then we're just going to throw hands on who is going to be held liable. This is a direct question towards their side, because if we're going to say a child cannot discern whether what is right or wrong, we can definitely say as adults as well, we cannot discern what is right or wrong because all of the decisions we have are circumstantial. All of the factors of choices there are based on the events that happens beforehand. Therefore, if we're going to judge solely based on the crime as the same as adults, we should also have the liberty to judge the crime based on what is happening within that particular case as well.
Yuan?
Okay, again, we're not meant to be symmetric here. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. At the same time that you would treat a child like an adult, that's the same time that you would not be treating the law as something that is wise. You should already take into account the children, despite all of these circumstances, don't know what they're doing. And even in the small majority that they do know what they're doing, at the end of the day, again, it is not their fault that they're put into these situations in the first place. If you really want to improve their lives, punish the ones who are actually liable and not the victims of circumstance.
We do not expect a Hail Mary, but we are being realistic. If people are allowed or are able to shoot other people as well, trigger warning, then that's also the same case on our side. Because if it's happening now, it will happen in the future. And it will definitely happen probably with your family, with our family, with their family. On our side, we have the direct solution. We do not expect people to be innocent, but at least we expect people to act accordingly. And that is our stance on our side. A much better, working, and accountable environment for each and every Filipino.
Okay. Any last messages na lang, Yuan, about that what if question?
Okay, you mentioned you mentioned a working system, you mentioned a systematic way of having these children be jailed. But at the end of the day, what really is your proof that this is going to work? I question your so I'm not trying to be provocative. I question the hypocrisy of the entire I question really the hypocrisy of the entire stance of anyone who is pro here. Mainly because if you want a system that is new, why demand it from a system that is already failing? You have not seen the current system work at its full capacity. Why expect a better one?
Okay.
If you talk about hypocrisy, then why put social reforms in the discussion? Because we're not putting the equal burden on all of the people. We do not expect all of the people to follow a certain rule. We're giving them the chance to have their own freedom of liberty, to have their own choice. We're not giving them a specific standard to follow. At least on our side, there is a direct accountability measure, a check and balance system on their actions, but not necessarily a social standard for them to follow. They still have their own liberty. They still have their own chance to explore themselves. And at least at the end of the day, we're able to understand on ourselves the burden of our choices and actions.
Okay. Thank you so much. Maraming salamat sa ating mga debaters. I would not want the free flow to push there because I want the team to confirm with each other like kung ano yung final stance ninyo. But I did hear a lot of valid points. So sana sa mga schoolmates natin dyan, napaisip kayo, di ba? Because you can only understand what really is on the line if you yourselves are the ones na hahatulan. Either you yourselves ang hahatulan or you yourselves ang apektado dun sa ginawa ng isang bata, right? So, hindi pa tayo nagtatapos sa pagbabalik ng schoolmates. Malalaman naman natin kung ano ang opinion ng ating mga netizens about a criminal liability o ang pagbaba ng edad ng criminal liability for heinous crimes sa edad na 10 years old. At dito lang yan sa Schoolmates.
Hatid sa inyo ng National Irrigation Administration ang programang magpapakita ng mga inisyatiba ng NIA sa pagsasaayos at pangangalaga ng sistema ng irigasyon sa bansa. Dahil tubig ang isa sa pinakamahalagang likas na yaman sa mundo. Kaya talina't sumabay sa agos ng pag-unlad sa patubig sa bagong Pilipinas. Sabado, alas 4:30, dito lang sa inyong pambansang TV.
Nagbabalik ang Schoolmates. At sa puntong ito, basahin muna natin ang opinyon ng ating mga netizens. Sabi ni Rani Romano, lowering the age of criminal liability is not only punishing the offenders. It will also serve as disciplinary reminder that even at their youngest age, they should be aware of the possible consequences of their heinous actions. If the parents cannot control or discipline their child, the law will. Sabi naman ni Lolita Ariate, I think the best age is 13 to make a teenager to be liable criminally. In this generation of modern technology, a 13-year-old is already aware of his environment, bad or good. And at last, sabi naman ni George Baay, no, for me, 10 years old is too young to get jailed. Kids at this age are not fully developed. And we should also consider the poor justice system and police patola.
Ano yung police patola? Nakakaloka yung police patola.
We can lower the age but not 10 years old. Ayan. Okay. Narinig na natin ang say ng ating mga netizens. At talaga namang maging sila hatirin ang kanilang mga saloobin at opinion ngayong episode. And with that, grabe, congratulations sa mga debaters natin. Dahil sa totoo lang, no, ang bawat debaters natin ay nagpakita ng galing sa talastasan at pagbibigay ng mga impormasyon at detalye na kung saan kapupulutan ng aral ng mga schoolmates natin na nanonood ngayon.
Yes. At syempre, no, hindi lang siya tungkol sa kung sino yung panalo or talo sa isang debate, 'di ba? So mahalaga din yung matutong makinig kahit yung mga nagde-debate, 'di ba? Para to ensure na tuhog kung ano yung sinasabi ko sa sinasabi mo, 'di ba?
And of course, para masagot din kung ano yung idea na nabato sa'yo. And with that, feeling ko, lahat tayo ay panalo.
Correct. Sana sa mga schoolmates natin, marami kayo natutunan about this episode. At of course, simulan mo na natin. Anong thoughts mo doon, Jinx? So, pinag-usapan nila kanina.
Nag-note ako ng marami.
Okay,
Kasi ang daming notes na na dapat masaloy kasi ang ganda ng mga nakuha nila. Pero first, magle-lay down muna ako ng mga real life situations. Like for example, ang sabi kasi
gusto natin marinig.
Ang sabi kasi ni Sir Kiko, the author of Juvenile Justice and Welfare Act, no, in-address niya na yung may mga maling impormasyon ang patungkol sa law na ito.
Okay.
Dahil given the situation of maguwad killings.
Okay, I've heard of that. Yes.
Nare-remember nyo, no? Nare-remind nyo. Yung mga minors na pumatay sa mga maguwad siblings na yon ay nahatulan as
Adults.
Yes.
Okay.
At ngayon, nakulong na sila behind bars.
Okay.
Ayun. And also, no, pumasok din sa isipan ko yung reality, yung na-mention nyo kanina, science or public safety. Kasi sobrang ganda nun eh. Well, theoretically, no, magandang pakinggan yung mga dapat gawin and dapat implementa ng batas. Pero, mas kailangan din natin ng public safety.
Correct.
Kasi kung puro tayo
Siyensya.
at pag-alam ng theoretical na bagay, paano yung implementation nito at paano masisecure yung public safety ng bawat isa. And according to Kiko rin, no, ang sabi ni Senator Kiko, no, walang problema sa batas. Ang problema nito ay kung paano ito implementa.
Correct.
The implementation, the enforcement, no? And para himayin yung bawat nasabi ng bawat grupo, no? Sa una, yung sa may pros, is the accountability for serious crimes where children commit heinous crimes. Example nga, yung murder and rape should face accountability, sabi nga nila, since the gravity of their actions greatly impacts the victims and also the society. Kasi once na nalaman yan online, syempre pag pipiestahan yan, kung narapat bang sintesyahan ang isang bata base sa bigat na nagawa nito.
Correct.
And next is deterrence effect. Like for example, knowing they can be punished at a younger age may discourage minors from committing serious crimes, prevents exploitation by adults.
Okay.
Kasi may mga syndicates nga naman, no, na hinahayaan yung mga bata na gumawa ng mga heinous crimes such as these, like yung mga na-mentions natin kanina, dahil alam nila na ang mga batang ito ay hindi makukulong dahil nga sa mga sa age nila. The justice for victims. Like ang ganda nun, no, nang na-mention kanina na parang paano yung mga biktima? Paano yung kunwari na-experience mo yun? Tapos ang gumawa nun ay may kita mong nakangiti pa, tumatawa pa. Like for example,
sa school pa.
Yes,
Diba?
kitang-kita yan online, even international. Yung mga bata and even the teenagers, kapag nag-commit sila ng mga ganong crimes, tinatawanan ng nila yung judge. Kasi they know, in the end of the day, uuwi sila.
Yes.
In the end of the day, hindi sila makukulong. And sa may cons naman is children's cognitive development. Gaya nga ng mention kanina, no, na hindi pa fully developed yung mga bata and hindi pa wise yung decisions nila how to think good or think critically kung tama ba or masama yung ginagagawa nila, no. And I think with that kind of point, feeling ko mahirap din siyang sabayan kasi nga nabato rin, no, na paano pa tayo, kailan pa tayo kikilos kung kailan ba nagawa na?
So, dun sa mga sinabi ng mga debaters kanina, lahat kasi yon valid points.
Right.
Pero if you are to place yourself in a situation as a lawmaker, at someone who's on the receiving end of the law, what is the definition of justice?
Right.
'Di ba? Kasi at the end of the day, parang nagkakaroon lang ng pakialam ang mga kabataan pag apektado na sila.
Yes.
So, kung ikaw ba bilang kabataan, it's actually a question sa mga kabataan natin ngayon. How do you feel that your moral compass would be stronger? Ito ba ay kapag meron ng nakapataw na batas na makukulong ka kapag ito yung ginawa mo or hindi? Or do you feel that the rehabilitation factor really works? Kasi for some children who are not able to have that kind of guidance, that approach doesn't work.
Right.
'Di ba? So parang paminsan injecting fear also helps teach accountability. So actually in this scenario, payag ako na bumaba yung criminal liability.
Actually ako rin eh.
Oo. So 'di ba parang tayo medyo nasusway tayo doon. Pero dun sa sinabi nung Con kanina na what's wrong with the current justice system? Correct naman. Enforcement yung kailangan.
Yes.
But that's why for me, nung tinatanong kanina, ano dapat yung pinaprioritize ng government? Dapat sabay yun eh.
Oo.
Education tsaka family support programs. Kasi, kaya naman sila napupunta doon sa ganong uri ng circumstances. Anong ipapangkain mo sa mga kabataan?
Yes, ang ganda
diba?
no?
Anong kakainin nila? Or, bakit sila papasok sa eskwela? Kung pwede nila magnakaw na lang sila at makakain yung pamilya nila.
Yes.
Diba? So, remove that deterring effect for them. Para, or rather, put that deterring effect for them. Para, kumbaga, ang iisipin nila, sige, gusto kong mag-aral rather than doon ako sa labas ng paaralan, gumagawa ng kung ano-ano, 'di ba? So parang let's have that kind of approach na fair both to the victim, sa bata at syempre dun sa pamilya. Kasi kung hindi yun holistic approach, at the end of the day, nagdagdag ka lang ng headcount sa loob ng prison.
Totoo.
At the end of the day, hindi rin sila mare-reform. Dadami lang yung kaya pang gumawa nun. Kung ngayon nga hindi sila natatakot sa prison, what more? Diba?
Totoo.
So, if it doesn't work, change the approach. Diba? We're not being wise by using the same approach and expecting a different result.
Yes.
Diba? So, kaya naman, schoolmates, maraming salamat, no? Sa lahat ng nakinig sa ating programa, sa debaters natin, and of course, sa BP Studios.
Thank you so much po.
Naging tahanan namin. At sana medyo nanginig din kayo sa topic natin kanina at sana maging relevant ito sa inyo ngayon. And with that, sa bawat issues, sa bawat tanong, may boses tayong mga kabataan.
Sumali makinig at makiisa dahil ang bawat opinion natin ay mahalaga.
Kaya naman, sabay-sabay natin isigaw sa buong mundo, schoolmates, may pakialam ka!
Sigawan